My name is Vlad. I'm not a hero from posters. I'm just a Ukrainian man who learned too fast that dirt can be a wall and silence can be a warning. Luhansk taught us that. We held a line outside the city where the ground was cut into old irrigation ditches and fresh trenches, stitched together with sandbags, scrap boards, and whatever we could carry. In the daytime, it looked like nothing. Fields, low trees, broken fences. At night, it became a maze where every step had a price. Our commanders told us the same thing they always told us. Hold. Don't let them slip through. Watch the gaps. And we watched. We listened. We learned to read small signs, fresh footprints where there shouldn't be any, a cigarette ember hidden in a bush, a dog that suddenly stopped barking. That week, the Russians were probing hard. Not a full assault, more like fingers feeling for a weak spot. They tried to push small groups through the gray areas between positions, hoping to make us panic, hoping to make us shoot at shadows and waste ammo. We didn't have ammo to waste. We had each other, though. Sergei with his cracked jokes, Maxim, who could fall asleep sitting up, and my closest buddy, Danilo, who always carried a little icon in his pocket and rubbed it like it was a button that could restart the world. On the third night, the air went still. No insects. No distant engines. That's when you know someone is moving. Our lookout signaled. A shape, low to the ground, crawling toward the shallow trench line that led to our flank. We let it come closer. When the shadow rose to run, we moved as one. Two of us cut the angle, one stayed back with a rifle, and I slid down into the ditch to block the retreat. He was young, not the movie villain kind, just a scared face under a dirty helmet. His hands shook so hard his weapon looked heavier than he was. "Don't," he blurted out in Russian before we even spoke. "I don't want—" We bound his wrists with a spare cord and pulled him into cover. Danilo searched him quick, careful. I watched the prisoner's eyes. They weren't hunting. They were begging. "Name?" I asked. He swallowed. "Sasha." "Unit?" He hesitated, then answered like someone who'd been taught to lie but wasn't good at it. We didn't beat him. We didn't need to. Fear does enough work when a man realizes he's alone in foreign dirt. We sent him back with a small escort to the command post. Before they left, Sasha looked at me, really looked, and said something that stuck in my throat. They laugh at me there," he whispered. "My own. They call me trash. I can't go back." I didn't know what to do with that, so I did what soldiers do. I buried it under tasks. Check the sector, reinforce the corner, rotate positions. Keep breathing. Later, during a short lull, we got word on the radio from the south, Kherson region. Civilians were standing in the roads, unarmed, refusing to move. Old men, women, kids with flags, blocking armored columns like the asphalt itself had grown a spine. Our radio operator said it like he couldn't believe it. "Can you imagine?" he muttered. "People with empty hands stopping steel." It gave us something warm for a minute. Not comfort, war doesn't give that, but proof. Proof that this wasn't only our fight in trenches. The whole country was pushing back in every way it could. That night the Russians answered with shelling, not precise, just angry. The ground bucked, dirt rained into our helmets. A plank snapped somewhere and the air filled with that sour smell of explosives that sticks to your tongue. When it finally eased, we checked the line. A section of trench had collapsed near a bend we called the Hook. Danilo and Maxim went to fetch boards. Sergei stayed with the radio. I volunteered to go forward and make sure nobody used the chaos to slip in. I crawled along the trench, one elbow at a time, listening. The world was a thin whistle of wind and distant cracking in the ruins. Then I heard it. breathing that wasn't mine, close, steady, right around the bend. I froze. I eased my rifle up, but the trench was too tight, the angle too close. If I fired, the blast would blind me, the sound would call everyone, and I might hit one of ours in the dark. I shifted to my sidearm, then stopped again, too loud. A shape rose at the bend, almost bumping into me. A Russian soldier, mud on his face, eyes wide like mine. We were so close I could see the reflection of the faint starlight in his pupils. For a second, neither of us moved. No shouting, no hero lines. Just two men trapped in a narrow strip of earth. His rifle was slung awkwardly, jammed by the collapse. He reached down instead, fast, and I saw the flash of metal. Knife. My own hand went to my belt without thinking. Cold handle. Familiar weight. In that trench, there was no front line, no map, no big speeches. Only the scrape of boots in wet clay and the knowledge that if I hesitated, I wouldn't get a second chance. He lunged, and the trench went completely quiet. He came at me like a cornered animal, fast, clumsy, desperate. The first swipe of his knife hit my sleeve instead of skin, and I felt the fabric tear. I shoved my shoulder into him, trying to pin his arm against the trench wall. The mud made everything slippery, like the ground itself was betraying us. We breathed like engines. My knife was up, but I didn't swing wide, no room. In a trench, you don't fight красиво. You fight close. You fight ugly. He tried to headbutt me. His helmet cracked against my forehead and stars burst in my eyes. I tasted blood and grit. I slammed him into the sandbags, felt them collapse under his back, and for half a second I thought, now, finish it. But in that half second, the trench shook again. Not footsteps. Impact. A shell landed close enough to punch the air out of our lungs. The blast didn't kill us. It just turned the world into raw noise and falling dirt. The trench walls shed chunks like wet bread. Something heavy, maybe a board, maybe a piece of beam, hit my shoulder and drove me down. The Russian soldier twisted out of my grip and vanished into the smoke and dust like a ghost. I reached for my rifle, couldn't find it. I reached for the radio on my chest, dead weight, smashed or clogged with mud. I tried to climb, but the trench had changed shape. The bend was half collapsed. My exit was now a steep, crumbling slope. Every time I pulled myself up, the earth slid back down, grabbing at my gloves. Then a hand closed on my collar from behind. Not Ukrainian. A voice hissed in my ear, close and harsh. Ticho, don't move. I swung my elbow back and hit air. Another hand grabbed my wrist. I fought, but there were two, maybe three of them pressing me down, pinning me like I was just another sandbag. They yanked my knife away. Someone hit me in the ribs with the butt of a weapon, and I folded without wanting to. Pain spread like fire under my jacket. My helmet was pulled off. A flashlight burned my face for a second. Ukrainiets, one of them said, like it was a dirty word. They didn't shoot me. That's the part people don't understand. Sometimes they want you alive, not because they're kind, but because they want information, because they want to feel powerful, because they want a trophy they can talk over later. They dragged me through their side of the broken trench line, over torn earth and smashed bushes. I tried to mark the direction in my head. Left turn, right turn, down a ditch, across a patch of open ground. But the night and the udar to my ribs turned everything into water. I kept thinking of Danilo and the others. They'll come. They'll notice I'm missing. But war doesn't notice. War just moves on. They shoved me into a dugout, low ceiling, damp smell, someone's sweat and fuel. A lantern flickered. There were two other prisoners, Ukrainian boys with gray faces, wrists tied, eyes empty like they'd already been asked the same questions 10 times. A man sat on a crate, not in a hurry. He had a clean uniform, clean boots. That kind of cleanliness in Luhansk always meant one thing. He wasn't the one crawling through mud. He was the one sending others into it. He looked me over like a mechanic looks at a broken part. "Name," he said. I didn't answer. He smiled, slow. "You don't want to talk? Fine." He leaned closer. "We will talk anyway." They asked about our positions, our numbers, where the mines were, what weapons we had, who commanded us. I gave them nothing useful, not because I'm made of steel, but because I pictured my guys in their trench, trusting me. That trust was heavier than fear. When I refused, the clean boot man nodded to someone behind me. The hit came from the side, a sharp crack that made my ear ring. Then another. Not torture like in movies, no clever devices. Just violence that says, we can hurt you whenever we want. In the breaks between questions, I heard them joking, laughing, mocking their own soldiers too, calling them names for being slow, for being scared. It was ugly, constant, like a language they didn't even notice they were speaking. And that's when I remembered Sasha, the prisoner we'd taken earlier. His whisper, "They laugh at me there. I can't go back." I started to understand, not forgive, understand. Their army wasn't only brutal to us, it was brutal to itself. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time in captivity is like chewing rubber. At some point, they tossed me a piece of bread that tasted like damp cardboard and a cup of water that smelled like metal. That night, a new wave of shelling started. Not ours, closer, heavier, chaotic. Their dugout ceiling shook dust into our eyes. The Russians cursed, rushed outside, shouted into radios. In that chaos, the clean boot man disappeared. The guard left in the dugout was young, younger than me. He held his rifle like he didn't trust it. He glanced at us prisoners, 3 Ukrainians tied up, and muttered to himself, angry and scared. Then, very quietly, he said something that made my heart stutter. "I don't want to die here," he whispered. He wasn't talking to us. He was talking to the darkness. I shifted my hands behind my back, testing the knot. It was tight, but whoever tied it had done it fast. The cord rubbed my skin raw, but I felt a little give, a little chance. Outside, another explosion hammered the earth. The guard flinched and turned his head for half a second. That half second was everything. I slid my wrists, twisting, pulling, biting back a grunt. The knot loosened just enough for one hand, then the other. Blood rushed back into my fingers like needles. The guard turned back. He saw my hands free. His eyes widened and he raised the rifle. I moved first. I didn't attack him with rage. I attacked him with one thought. Get out. Get back to mine. I lunged, knocked the barrel aside, slammed him into the wall. The lantern swung wildly. Shadows jumped. He tried to shout. I clapped my hand over his mouth and felt his hot breath against my palm. He struggled. I pressed harder, whispering into his ear, low and hard. "Quiet, or we both die." His body went stiff. He stared at me, terrified, then something else. Something like recognition, like he'd been waiting for an excuse to stop being a part of this. He nodded, barely. I eased my grip, kept my eyes on his hands. Slowly, like handling a grenade, I reached for the keys hanging from his belt. He didn't stop me. And in that shaking dugout, with the earth thundering above us, I understood something simple and dangerous. Escape wasn't going to be a sprint. It was going to be a knife edge. One wrong move and the ground would swallow me again. The Russian guard's hands were shaking so much the keys jingled like a bell. I hated that sound. In war, any little sound can be your last. I didn't trust him. I couldn't. But I watched his eyes and saw the same thing I'd seen in the trench when we caught Sasha. Not hatred. Fear mixed with disgust, like he'd stepped into something rotten and couldn't wash it off. "Why are you helping?" I whispered. He swallowed. They'll kill me anyway. If not today, then later. For being weak. For being slow. He spat the words like they burned. I can't stand them. That was it. Not a poem. Not a confession. Just a cracked voice and a simple truth. Their own people were breaking each other. Behind us, the dugout rattled again from another udar. Dust fell like flour. The two other Ukrainian boys stared at me, waiting. Their wrists were raw, faces gray, but their eyes were still alive. "Quiet," I told them. "We move when I say." The guard pointed at a corner where the wall had been repaired with old boards. "There's a service trench behind. It goes to a drainage ditch. If you crawl, you can get out without crossing open ground." He leaned in closer, almost begging now. "If you get back, tell them I didn't want this. Tell them I want out. I want to join you." Those words hit me strange. Join us. In that moment, I didn't feel mercy. I felt exhaustion, like the world had gone upside down and refused to settle. "You want to join Ukraine," I said quietly. "Then help us live." He nodded fast. We moved. He opened the boards just enough for a man to squeeze through, and cold air hit us. Night air, wet and sharp. I slipped first, then pulled the two guys after me. The guard came last, then froze, listening. Footsteps above. Voices. Russians shouting into radios. Someone laughing, even now, like war was a joke they owned. The guard's face twisted. "They're drunk," he muttered. "They're always like that." We crawled into the service trench, narrow, half full of water. My ribs screamed with every movement. I kept my breathing small, like I could hide it inside my chest. At a bend, the guard grabbed my sleeve. "Wait." We stopped. A flashlight swept over the opening ahead, then passed. Boots splashed in the mud, close enough I could smell cheap tobacco. One of them said, "If we catch another Ukrainian rat, I'll cut his ears off." Then they walked away, still talking, still laughing. The guard's jaw clenched. "See," he whispered. "That's them. That's all they are." We kept going, inch by inch, until the trench opened into a ditch with dead reeds and black water. The sky above looked too wide after hours underground. That's when the guard did something I didn't expect. He handed me his knife. "Take it," he said. If you have to." "And you?" I asked. He shrugged like he didn't deserve one. "I don't know what I am." I didn't have time to solve him. I nodded once and took the knife. It felt heavier than metal. It felt like a decision. We followed the ditch until the ground rose into a low ridge. Somewhere far off, machine guns stitched the dark. A flare went up, pale and slow, and for a moment the world turned white. Fields, craters, broken trees, the thin line of trenches like scars. I watched the flare drift down and I thought of Kherson again. Not because it was near, because it was in our heads. Our radio operator had told us how people stood in the roads with empty hands and flags, stopping armored columns like stone walls made of flesh and courage. I imagined an old woman in a scarf staring straight into a tank commander's eyes, saying without words, "You are not welcome here." They didn't have rifles. They had refusal. And sometimes refusal is stronger than steel. We waited until the flare died, then moved. The guard guided us around a minefield. He didn't give me a map, just nervous gestures and short warnings. "Not there. Left. Step where the grass is flattened." He knew where their lanes were. He knew where men disappeared. At the edge of the gray zone, he stopped. His whole body went tight. "That's as far as I go," he said. "You said you want to join us," I reminded him. His eyes flicked back toward his side of the line. "If I cross with you, your guys might shoot me. If I go back, my guys will shoot me." He laughed once, dry, broken. "Good choices." I looked at him hard. "Then give me something real, not words." He nodded and leaned close, whispering fast, like he was throwing a rope before drowning. "There's a commander," he said. "They call him Major, but he's the one who orders the shootings, the houses, the people. He likes it." His lips trembled. "They say he's going to move to a new command point, near the old brick plant, tonight or tomorrow. He's always surrounded by 2 cars and a radio truck." That was real. I locked that in my mind like a pin through paper. Brick plant, 2 cars, radio truck. Timing. Then the guard stepped back into the dark reeds and disappeared without another word, like he'd never existed. Me and the 2 Ukrainians crawled forward alone. Crossing back was worse than escaping. When you escape, you're running from death. When you return, you're running toward your own rifles, hoping your people recognize you before they pull the trigger. We moved low. We stopped often. Every sound felt like it came from inside my skull. At last I saw the shape of our trench line. Different sandbags, different pattern, a small broken fence we'd used as a landmark. I whispered the passphrase we'd agreed on that week, and I did it the only safe way. Quiet, steady, no sudden movement. "Svi, Vlad, ne strelaj." A rifle clicked somewhere. A voice, Danilo's voice, rough and shot. "Vlad?" A hand grabbed my vest and yanked me down like a sack of grain. Faces appeared above me, mud, exhaustion, eyes wide like they'd seen a ghost. "You're alive," Danilo breathed, and for a second his tough mask cracked. "We thought—" "Later," I rasped. "I have info." They dragged the other 2 Ukrainians in, gave them water, wrapped them in blankets like they were children. My ribs wouldn't let me stand straight, but I kept talking, because if I stopped talking, I'd start shaking. Brick plant, 2 cars, radio truck, commander who orders killings, move tonight or tomorrow. Serhiy, the radio guy, was already calling it up the chain. And then, like war loves its timing, our radio crackled with another message, this one from a different direction, excited and clipped. "Confirmed strike. Enemy command element eliminated. The one involved in civilian executions, neutralized." No names, no celebration, just a cold sentence that meant something huge. One of their main butchers was gone. Danilo looked at me like the night was finally adding up. "Your info might have helped," he murmured. "Or maybe it's just our turn to be faster." I didn't answer. I just stared into the trench wall and felt my heartbeat slow for the first time in days. Later, when they took me to the command post to report properly, I saw someone sitting on an ammo box with his wrists tied and his head down. Sasha. The same prisoner we'd grabbed before I disappeared. He lifted his eyes when I walked in, and his face twisted like he wanted to cry but refused to give anyone the pleasure. I told them, he said quietly. I told them everything I know. Not about you, about them. About what they do. Our officer watched him like a hawk. Why? Sasha swallowed. Because I can't go back. They humiliate me every day. They beat the weak. They laugh at dead civilians like it's a joke. He looked straight at me now. I want to switch sides. I want to fight with you. Even if you don't trust me, I don't care. I'd rather die trying to be human. The room went silent. I didn't suddenly become soft. I didn't forget what I'd seen, what they'd done. But I remembered that guard's shaking hands and the hatred in his voice when he said that's all they are. War breaks people in different directions. Some turn into monsters. Some try, desperately, to crawl out of the same goodiyas. I leaned in close to Sasha and said one sentence, the only honest one I had. If you really want Ukraine, prove it with truth, and prove it every day. He nodded, hard, like he'd been waiting for that test. Outside, Luhansk kept burning in the distance, and in my chest, under the pain, one thought stayed sharp. I made it back once. Now I had to survive what comes after. After I got back, I thought I'd finally sleep. That's what I told myself. One night, just one normal night. But the body doesn't forget captivity so easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that narrow dugout, that lantern swinging, that feeling of earth pressing down like a lid. So I stayed awake. I smoked with the others, chewed dry bread, listened to the radio like it was a heartbeat. The command post was busy. Men came and went, mud on their boots, maps in their hands. No shouting, no movie drama, just that quiet, focused Ukrainian way. Do what must be done, quickly, without extra words. Sasha sat in the corner, hands tied, guarded by two of ours. He kept his head down like he was trying to shrink into nothing. When someone passed, he flinched, like he expected a kick. That told me more than his speeches. Our officer, a calm man everyone called teacher because he spoke like a schoolmaster, asked me to repeat everything again. The brick plant, the cars, the radio truck, the commander who liked killing civilians. I told it straight, no heroic tone, just facts. Teacher nodded once. Good, that's enough. Then he looked at Sasha. You said you want to fight for Ukraine, teacher said. Sasha swallowed. Yes. Then prove it, teacher replied. Same words I'd said earlier, but colder. Tell us what you know. Names, habits, where they move, what they fear. Sasha's face went pale. He glanced at the guards, then at me, like he needed one Ukrainian eye to say, go on, speak. They call him Major, he whispered. He doesn't sleep in one place. He moves like a fox. But he likes to show off. He brings cameras sometimes. He makes them record when he humiliates people. His voice cracked. Civilians. Old men. Women. My fists tightened on their own. Sasha took a breath and forced the words out fast. The brick plant is real. The cars, too. The radio truck always stays a little back. He hates walking. He always wants cover, always wants someone else to take the risk. Teacher listened without expression, writing nothing down, just memorizing, like all good commanders do. When Sasha finished, teacher stood up and said, All right. That was it. No thank you, no good job. In war, you don't hand out kindness like candy. You save it for later, if later even comes. That night, the radio brought news from the south again. Kherson region. Civilians. At first it sounded impossible, like a legend soldiers tell to keep their hearts from freezing. They stood in front of armored vehicles, he said, reading off the report. No weapons. Flags. Some had just cardboard signs. They blocked roads, argued, surrounded columns. They made it slow. They made it loud. They made it visible. Visible. That was the key. Russia liked quick darkness, quiet takeovers, fear, confusion. But in Kherson, people refused to be quiet. They filmed, shouted, called neighbors, came out in crowds. A tank can crush a body, yes, but a tank can't crush a whole city's refusal without showing the whole world what it is. And even the occupier understands one thing. When cameras are everywhere, every step becomes heavier. We weren't there in Kherson, but hearing about it changed the air in our trench. We sat straighter. We stopped feeling alone. Danilo whispered, like he was talking to his icon again. They're fighting too, just in a different way. I nodded. Same war. Different hands. 2 days later, we got an order. A small group would go out at night and confirm movement near the brick plant. Not a big attack, not some Hollywood strike, just eyes, ears, patience. War often depends on boring work done right. Teacher picked me. You've seen their side, he said. You know how they think. My ribs still hurt, but I said yes. Because you can't say no to a place that already ate you once. You go back, and you take a bite out of it instead. Before we moved, Sasha spoke up from the corner. Let me go, he said. Everyone laughed, short, hard laughs. Our guard spat. You think we're idiots? Sasha flinched, then pushed through. Not alone. Just let me point. I know their voices. I know their signals. I can tell you if it's them. Teacher stared at him for a long moment. Then Teacher surprised us all. He leaned down and said quietly, You'll stay here, but you'll help now. He pointed at the map and asked Sasha about small details, routes they prefer, what kind of radio calls they use when a commander moves, what vehicles are common. Sasha answered like a man pulling thorns from his own throat. And for the first time, I saw the guards look at him not as a prisoner, but as a tool. A dangerous tool, but useful. In war, that's sometimes the closest thing to trust. We went out after midnight, 4 of us, no big speeches. We moved like shadows, slow and careful. Near the brick plant we heard engines, low voices, a door slam, a dog barking once, then silence. We didn't rush in. We watched. 2 cars rolled in, and yes, behind them, a radio truck, sitting back like a spider waiting for its web to pull tight. A man got out of the first car, surrounded by guards. Even in the dark, you could tell he was important. The way others moved around him, the way he didn't hurry. My stomach turned cold. Danilo breathed near my ear. Is that him? I couldn't see his face, but I felt it in my bones. That smell of power, that calm cruelty. We pulled back and reported. Teacher didn't celebrate. He simply nodded and passed the information up the chain. Hours later, closer to morning, the radio crackled again with the kind of sentence that makes men go quiet. Confirmed. Target eliminated. That was all. One of the main commanders, the one tied to the killing of innocents, was gone. Not because we were bloodthirsty, but because sometimes justice in war is a cold, necessary thing. You stop a hand that keeps pulling the trigger at civilians. You don't do it for glory. You do it so fewer mothers cry tomorrow. After that, the mood in our position changed. Not happy, just steadier. Like a knot inside us loosened. Sasha asked to speak to me that evening. The guards allowed it, standing close. He looked worse than before, eyes red, hands trembling. "They'll know someone talked," he whispered. "They'll hunt for it." "And you?" I asked. He swallowed. "I can't go back, even if you let me. They'll kill me first. They hate people like me more than they hate you. Because I remind them they're rotten." I studied him. Then I said, "You know what Kherson people did?" He nodded. "Yes. They didn't fear." I shook my head. "No. They feared. They just didn't let fear lead." Sasha stared at the ground like those words were heavier than cuffs. Then he whispered, barely audible, "I want that. I want to be like that, not like them." I didn't promise him anything. Promises are expensive in war. I only said, "Then tomorrow you speak to teacher again. You give truth. You don't play games. And you accept that nobody will trust you fast." He nodded, hard. Outside, the wind ran through the ruined trees. Somewhere far away, Luhansk kept burning. Somewhere far south, Kherson people kept standing in roads with empty hands. Different front, same spine. And I understood something simple. Ukraine wasn't only trenches and rifles. Ukraine was also a grandmother in a scarf, stepping forward, saying no, and meaning it so strongly that even steel had to stop and think. After the strike on that commander, the trench didn't suddenly become safe. Luhansk didn't stop burning. The enemy didn't disappear. The only thing that changed was inside us. We knew that even the untouchables can fall. And that meant our hands weren't empty. But the hardest fight for me wasn't outside. It was sitting a few meters from Sasha, watching him breathe. Because a Russian who says, "I want to join Ukraine," is not a miracle. It's a risk. And in war, risk can kill your friends faster than bullets. Teacher called me in the morning. He had the same calm face as always, like he trained himself to never show the storm. "Vlad," he said, "you spoke with him. What do you feel?" I stared at the map so I wouldn't stare at teacher. "I feel nothing," I lied. Teacher nodded like he'd heard that lie 1,000 times. "Good. Then speak with your head." He explained it simple. If Sasha was honest, he could save lives. If Sasha was a trap, he could destroy a whole position. There's no middle. So we did what Ukrainians do. We checked. We separated him from everyone. We asked the same questions in different ways, at different times, with different people. We compared his answers to radio intercepts, to reports from other units, to what I'd heard in captivity. We watched his reactions when names were mentioned. We watched what he feared. And I noticed something. He didn't fear us. He feared going back. Not because he thought we would shoot him. He feared the humiliation, the beatings, the laughter that ate his own army from the inside. That ridicule had broken him more than shells. One evening, when the air was quiet, I sat near him with a guard nearby. I didn't offer cigarettes. I didn't offer comfort. I just asked one question. "Why didn't you run earlier? Why now?" Sasha's mouth twitched like he wanted to smile but couldn't. "Because earlier I thought it was normal," he said. that men must be cruel to be strong. And then I saw them laugh at civilians, at dead people. I saw them steal from houses like it was sport. He swallowed. I kept thinking, if I stay, I become them. He lifted his eyes. And I don't want to be them. That sentence didn't make him a saint, but it sounded human, and human is rare in war. Teacher made his decision a day later. We won't put a rifle in his hands, teacher said to us. Not yet. But we will use what he knows. So Sasha became a voice, not a fighter. He listened to intercepted radio chatter and helped translate their slang. He pointed on maps where units like to hide. He described how their patrols move when they are tired or drunk. He told us which commanders screamed and which ones stayed calm, and what that meant. Small details. The kind of details that keep you alive. And then the war tested him. A report came in that a group of civilians was trapped near a village on the edge of our sector, old people who hadn't managed to leave. The road was watched. The fields were mined. The enemy was searching houses. We planned a quiet evacuation at night. No shooting unless forced. Just bistere ruki, good timing, and a bit of luck. Before we went, Sasha asked teacher, "Let me come." Teacher's eyes narrowed. Why? Sasha's voice shook, but he didn't step back. Because I know how they check documents. I know their passwords for tonight. I can help you pass. If I'm lying, kill me. The trench went silent. Even Serhi stopped chewing. Teacher stared at him for a long time. Then he said, "You don't give orders. You follow. One wrong move and you're done." Sasha nodded fast. Understood. That night we moved like shadows again. I was in front, Danilo behind me, and Sasha in the middle, hands visible, no weapon. A guard watched him like a hawk watches a mouse. We reached the village edge and heard voices, 2 Russian soldiers arguing, bored, complaining about cold, about food, about each other. One of them laughed and called the other a disgusting name. The same kind of laughter I'd heard in captivity. Sasha stiffened beside me. His breathing quickened. "Look at me," I whispered. He looked. "Don't freeze," I said. "If you want out of that grias, walk." We waited for a moment when the arguing turned into smoking, when their attention drifted. Sasha leaned close and whispered their nightly call and response phrase. Quiet. Exact. Like he'd said it 100 times. One soldier answered without even thinking. We slipped past. Inside the village, we found the civilians in a half-collapsed cellar. 2 grandmothers, 1 grandfather, and a girl maybe 10 years old, clutching a little backpack like it was her whole life. When they saw us, the old man started crying without sound, just shaking, eyes wet. The girl stared at Sasha's face and then at his uniform pieces. "Is he?" she whispered. I didn't lie to her. I also didn't spill poison into a child's head. "He's a prisoner," I said. "And tonight he helps." Sasha lowered his head like he didn't deserve her fear. We guided them out, one by one, careful where we stepped. At one point, the grandfather stumbled and Sasha caught him by the arm. It was a simple movement, nothing heroic. But I saw the grandfather's hand squeeze Sasha's sleeve for a second, like he understood. People are complicated, but you still pulled me up. On the way back, a flare rose. White light. Open ground. The worst moment. One of our guys hissed, "Down!" Everyone dropped, civilians too. The little girl pressed her face into my jacket, trembling. And Sasha didn't run. He lay flat in the mud, hands open, and whispered barely, "Please, not again." Not again. Those words weren't about bullets. They were about being trapped inside his old life. The flare died. We moved. We got them out. When the civilians reached our side, the grandmothers crossed themselves and kissed the air like Ukraine itself was standing there. The little girl looked back once at Sasha. She didn't smile, but she said one thing, quiet and sharp. "Don't lie." Sasha nodded like that was the heaviest command he'd ever received. Afterward, teacher called the unit together.
"No one forgets what he is," teacher said.
"But also no one ignores what he did. He will stay under watch. He will work. He will earn every centimeter." That was Ukraine's way. Not blind mercy, not blind hatred. Work. Proof. Day by day. Later, when the trench finally went quiet, Danilo sat beside me. "You think we're doing the right thing?" he asked. I stared at the dark where Luhansk was, and I thought of Kherson again. People with empty hands blocking tanks, refusing to bow. "They didn't win because they were fearless," I said. "They won because they didn't let fear decide." Danilo nodded slowly. I looked down at my own hands, scarred, dirty, alive. Hands that had held a knife in a trench. Hands that had been tied in a dugout. Hands that had lifted a child out of a cellar. This is what the war did to me. It taught me that courage isn't one moment. It's 1,000 small choices in the mud. And in Luhansk, under that heavy sky, I made one more choice. I would keep fighting for Ukraine, not only with bullets, but with discipline, with truth, with the kind of stubborn humanity that our people showed in Kherson. Because that's what the enemy can't understand. Steel can be stopped by empty hands, and cruelty can be beaten by a country that refuses to become cruel.